Welcome back to the Nikki Clarke Show. The show is about transforming lives one story at a time, and we're always so excited to invite people from all walks of life to come and to share their heart stories. And we talk about, things that can uplift, empower, and transform people into the places that they should be in, whether it should be personally or professionally. And I'm always excited to hear people's backstories, to talk about what happened to them when they had their season of challenges, and now they're on the other side. And we have an incredible woman who is the managing partner at Eau Claire Partners, Inc. Diana Myrie is part of a full-service insurance and financial brokerage in Canada, and she's also a licensed insurance and financial broker in Ontario with over 13 years of experience in banking combined. She's a motivational speaker and best-selling author of Overcome Lack and Step into Abundance, Your Ultimate Guide to Financial Freedom. And Diana is also the director of the board at Suitcase in Point Theatre Company located in St. Catharines, Ontario, and the creator, host, and producer of her own talk show podcast, Conversations with Diana, where she shares inspiring stories of real people who are pursuing their passions and who have made a significant impact in their communities. Passionate about helping to empower individuals and the wider community, she's on a mission to help 100 families become more financially literate in 2021. She's married with 4 daughters and calls Niagara her home. Diana, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Nikki. It's a pleasure to be here. How are you doing today?
Excellent. Thank you so much. And how are you enjoying this beautiful weather today?
Oh, it's really nice. Trust me. It's a breath of fresh air after being indoors in the cold, as you know.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes. We're also blessed to have this time now of, making some more connections now that things are changing and opening up. So, Diana, I would love to know a little bit about your background leading up to what you're doing today. Where did that start? How did that journey begin?
That's a great question, Nikki. Thanks for asking. I have a Jamaican background. I was born and raised in Jamaica, and I'm of Barbadian descent, so I spent a greater deal of time between Barbados and Jamaica. And in doing so, I saw a lot in terms of being from the Caribbean and growing up and seeing people struggle financially. And as a result, I always had this sense of, wanting to know what it is about some people that made them do well financially and others that didn't necessarily do well. So all my life, I kind of felt this sense of wanting to go deeper. And God worked in mysterious ways, because after working in the HR industry for a number of years in Barbados, I came across someone who introduced me to the financial services arena. And I should note that shortly after that time, I was going through what we call, some people, for them, it has been something of a shift, because I was going through some marital issues, and eventually that led to a breakdown of the marriage. And it was devastating, not just from an emotional standpoint, but from a financial standpoint. And here it was that I was faced with not knowing how I would, in terms of my future with became a single mom, and not knowing how to grapple with this new norm. I delved deeper into trying to figure out how to overcome certain issues that I was going through. And one of the things that I learned was through a financial advisor at the time is you have to definitely shift. It's a mindset shift, which I found I had to do. It wasn't something that came immediately. It had to be a gradual. And shortly after that, by divine providence, I got into an insurance company where I was able to hone skills and interact with persons through conferences and through different training programs, and learned a lot about the importance of having protection and the importance of saving and investing. And not only that, I I started applying some of the things that my advisor at the time was telling me to or encouraging me to do, such as watching my credit and getting rid of certain unnecessary expenses. And to cut a long story short, Nikki, I started to look at the results that I was having and wanted to help others who were going through similar challenges, and started writing articles for the local paper. And people would contact me and say, the article you wrote about how to save and how to, cut back and really take control of finances, as some of the topics that I covered in the articles, it was very important for them to realize that it's just certain steps that needed to be taken, certain things that were challenging to them, like going to not eating out on a regular basis, but taking lunch to work, for instance. I tried to ensure that the information that I was given was shared with other people, because I wanted to help them to overcome the same challenges that I was facing at the time. And over the years, I became more involved in community by going out and giving financial literacy workshops. As a result of that, I shifted and went into banking. And yet again, I found there was other aspects like investment. There were things that I didn't know in insurance that I was starting to get exposed to. And through interacting with other people in the industry as well as other clients, I was able to start to comprehend that there is a difference to how some people look at life. The persons who were more focused on certain things, for instance, saving as opposed to just spending, how should I put it, willy-nilly. They grew up with having this mindset of prosperity as opposed to a mindset of lack. And even the way in which their parents introduced them to finance was different. And I thought, well, here is something that I wanted to go deeper and help my community, because in recognizing that there are certain things that we're not necessarily taught from an early age, it can impact us later on in life. Like I said, I had gone through a devastating divorce, and because I was able to pick up the pieces and change the trajectory of not just my life, but my child's life, I was able to, not just through doing that, but help others in the process. I decided I needed to write a book. And the book culminated last year. Actually, it's a year ago that I came out with a book called Overcome Lack and Step into Abundance, Your Ultimate Guide to Financial Freedom. And that's pretty much the backstory to how I got more involved in wanting to, help people to become more financially free.
Excellent. And then I guess this was the spark for you to publish Overcome Lack and Step into Abundance, Your Ultimate Guide to Financial Freedom, your best-selling book. What year did that come out?
It came out in 2020. So I wrote it during the pandemic and self-published it in June of 2020. And actually this week, as I said, makes a year since the book came out, and became a bestseller within the first 2 weeks on Amazon. And it's an achievement that I'm proud of. Thank you. I'm proud of, because I wrote it with the intention of helping people who are struggling financially to be able to get step-by-step, a simple step-by-step guide to help them with getting more information that they need to make certain shifts, mindset shifts, to get them to a point where they can start moving from a barely there or getting by mindset, the paycheck, living from paycheck to paycheck. I wanted to do my part to give them tips and strategies that I, over the years, came across, and through various helping to coach people over the years. I've helped hundreds of persons over the years to become more financially successful. I wanted to put this in a very simple book, and I'm proud to say that the book, as I said, became a best-selling book, and it has helped many people who found it, not only easy to read, but easy to apply some of the concepts. So certain concepts like how to save on a shoestring budget, what type of conversations to have if you're in a relationship, for instance. People don't know this, but maybe they do, but some people they're finding sometimes late in the game that if they had certain conversations prior to getting married, they could have avoided certain pitfalls, and finances is a major stressor in a lot of relationships. So I wanted to include a chapter in the book to help persons who may find it difficult to talk about their financial situation with their partner, for instance. And there are other things like how to retire successfully, or what are some of the steps you need to set up an educational plan for your child. So it's a holistic book, and I'm glad that I took the initiative. It was divinely inspired, I should say, as well, because it came out of a desire to help people. And I think in order to achieve or to fulfill your destiny, you have to come from a place of knowing that you have everything is at your disposal. God gave us, my belief is that God gave us everything we need to succeed, and it all starts in the mind. So if you are focused on the right things and using the word, then through having strategies and talking to a professional, of course, you are well on your way, I believe, to doing the right things that you need to do in order to set yourself up for financial success.
Absolutely. And as you alluded to, the mind is really a battlefield. So we're always conquering different thoughts. And unfortunately, there are more negative thoughts than positive that we kind of move through on a daily basis. So we really have to combat the negative ones to allow for the positive ones to carry through our mission. I really like what you said about having these candid conversations about your potential life partner, or, you're about to establish a relationship and you're dating, and maybe the idea is, I'd like to move to the next step, but I want to know where they're at financially. Can you talk about one or 2 points about how to start that conversation? It's a little daunting for a lot of people. They don't want to scare away that person, but it's actually very important to have. Yes.
Well, thanks. I think that's a great question. And yes, of course, I will offer a couple tips. Well, one of the first things I tell people is you have to be willing to be vulnerable. And that comes down to how much you feel you can trust the person. Remember, if you're thinking of getting into a serious committed relationship like marriage, for instance, you should at least be able, I think, to have an open and honest conversation. And that would mean just sitting down one day and saying, hey, this is something that is important to me, and is that something that is important to you? Do you mind sharing some of the things that, for instance, do you prefer us having a joint account, or you prefer to have a single account? Do you have any debts right now? Asking open-ended questions, and sometimes closed-ended questions, being as specific as possible, because it all depends. As you're feeling out the person, so to speak, you may not want to just come out right and say, what's your credit score, for instance? But you take baby steps along the way, or you could use a professional to help you. Like for my own example is, before I got remarried, because I am remarried now, we went to marriage counseling, or premarital counseling, I should say, and that was one of the topics that we had to, over 12 weeks. It wasn't just a one-off thing. Over 12 weeks, we had to ask each other questions. We had questionnaires, and we had things that we needed to bring out into the open. So things like, what is your money philosophy? So that's something that is very important to point out to the person that you're in a relationship when you're thinking of getting married to. What is your belief about saving, spending habits? What are your spending habits like? Because it's not to say that one answer is better than the other. It's just to get a sense of there are no surprises. Okay, we want to put everything out on the table. So, for instance, in the book I talk about you oftentimes find a saver has married a spender. There's always going to be that one person in the relationship. And sometimes it's the woman, But the other end of the spectrum, sometimes the woman is the one who manages the books and manages make sure that the bills are paid on time. So you could ask, for instance, questions like, how are you with managing a budget? Do you work with a budget? And if not, would you be open to doing that on a, maybe a weekly or a monthly basis? We sit down together and plan out, okay, this is our goal. We're working towards saving for a home. or are you someone who is the extreme? You don't like spending. You're very frugal. You're when you go out, you're like counting pennies, and sometimes that can break the ice. So that is about really getting to know the person, but asking very, very important questions. What is your philosophy as it relates to investing, for instance? Do you believe in the stock market? Do you believe in being more conservative? Again, going into investing is a whole other spectrum, because two people can be in a relationship and have different investment profiles, and that means one person might be more aggressive. Usually the male, I found in my experience, is more aggressive when it comes to investing, and the female is a bit more conservative. And it's not to say all females are, just that in my experience, the majority are more conservative. They don't like to take as big a risk as their male counterparts. So I don't know how many tips I gave you just now, but the main thing is just having open dialogue, asking specific questions, and being transparent. Because if, for instance, you're coming into the relationship with a lot of debt, I don't think it would be right or fair to the other person to not know. You should at least be able to say, well, okay, hon, I got in some trouble, things backed up, and now this is the debt that I'm carrying, and how can we as a couple work together to get to a point where, as a collective, we are stronger together, as opposed to you carrying this weight on your own. Some people may be open to that, others might not. It might be a deal breaker. But wouldn't you want to know early than to wait until it's too late? And it's not to say that things can't happen during the marriage. It's not to say that if you have this conversation before, it will prevent anything from happening. But it's good to have the conversations at different points in the relationship. But I point out specifically that if persons are thinking about getting married, it is very important. It's crucial, in fact, to know, for instance, what type of spending, do you have to spend anything outside the family or outside the household each month? Will it impact us? So, for instance, if there's going to be maintenance, child maintenance, child support payments, and how would that impact us if we had, using myself as an example, if we had a family of our own, how would the maintenance for the other children impact our family? So that the person is aware that these are things that can be expected. It's not going to come out of the blue one day. You're just having a conversation. Oh, by the way,
Right.
So
right. No surprises. Yes.
Yes,
Excellent.
everything should be an open book, and if there's a way that you can both meet with a professional at some point, just to get a sense of how to get things integrated. At that point, the professional can help guide and give, strategies on things like how to save towards a particular goal. You might have medium to long-term goals, and that's where every person, even the wealthiest person in the world, has a coach or a financial advisor to give them those strategies and tips to help them to achieve the goals that they've set up for themselves.
Absolutely. We don't always come with the tools. Sometimes it means the experience that kind of creates the wisdom, like in your example, or it's about seeking help, and there's no shame in asking for help. So that's very wise to
I talk about that
make
as
that
well.
suggestion.
Yes, exactly, because a lot of times we wait until it gets, how should I put it, you don't want to wait until it gets too late. And I remember hearing my advisor, who at the time I've gone to and said, well, this is a situation I'm faced with. And she said, well, a lot of people are not like you. They wouldn't come, at the time where they could get the help. Sometimes they come when it's too late, right? And then you have to go through unpleasant things like filing for bankruptcy, for instance. So I always try to impart that wisdom to say, you know what, don't ever be ashamed to ask for help. Don't ever be ashamed to speak to a trusted friend or someone who can help, because at the end of the day, telling a friend even isn't necessarily going to help you out. You really need to go to someone who can help or who can give you the advice and point you in the right direction. And it's best to do it as early as possible.
Early as possible. Excellent.
Asking for help and doing it as early as possible helps to avoid a world of pain.
Yeah. That's so profound, and I appreciate what you shared, and I really recommend everybody buy the book. I think this is like the Bible of financial recovery. We really need to take advantage of this wisdom available on Amazon.com, and we'll talk again how they can get a copy of the book, and I'm looking forward to getting my own copy. And I'm sure people after this pandemic experience, what's going on maybe 15, 16 months, and many people have been affected by job loss, either directly or indirectly. It really has been at the forefront of people's minds on financial security. So have you had conversations with people who have been through kind of financial upheaval in their household, and maybe a suggestion you gave to them to kind of make a quick recovery?
Yes, it's a mixed bag, because a lot of I deal mainly with business owners and individuals, of course, and I find that maybe the main concern is for those persons who are transitioning from being in full-time employment to now being put on part-time. They only get maybe a few hours a week, as opposed to having times, pre-COVID times, when they had like overtime. They've had to pivot and adjust to thinking about having multiple streams of income and doing things online, as opposed to, so the e-commerce world has exploded because a lot of persons are now getting into their own businesses and having more, seeing that they can't know the job that they were focused on, thinking that it was going to be a guaranteed job maybe for life. They're recognizing that they cannot, have, there's no one set guaranteed job anymore, and I talk about that as well in the book, where you should really start thinking about, if you haven't already, start thinking of having multiple streams of income. So I found a mixed bag where a lot of persons who have begun to do that are extremely happy with the results that they've gotten during COVID, because they found that there have been opportunities that have presented themselves, whereas before there were no such opportunities. And then there are other persons that are finding it the opportunity to study and re-equip themselves and get reskilled, and spending more quality time at home with the family. They're having that opportunity where they can spend more quality time, whereas before it was like a rat race, spending majority of the time heading to meetings and traveling overseas for these different meetings. But yes, for sure, there have been persons who have indicated that they've now had to settle with having a one-income family as opposed to both persons working. And that in and of itself, as you can imagine, can be challenging, especially if they were struggling on two incomes. Now it's down to one income. So for persons who have that complaint or who are having challenges, my thing is, you're not alone, and it will get better. And in everything, for me, it's all about information, and it's all about being honest and open with yourself to say, okay, we need help. How are we going to get from point A to point B, especially if it's a case where we've been trying to get, jobs, because you hear about a lot of persons who have been applying for jobs and are not getting jobs. And then you hear about other people, it's a mixed bag, as I said. Some people try and they just get it like that. But at the end of the day, I think it all begins with taking the time to look for opportunities. Again, everything can be stressful, but if you have a mind where you're focused on trying to see the glass half full as opposed to half empty, and you're in a situation where it's just one income, let's look for opportunities where we can look at the family in terms of where we can maybe cut back. If it's a case where you can maybe cut back on some subscriptions, you'd be surprised when we go through budgets and we see where there's extra things that we're spending money on that we really, if we cut back on them, we could channel that extra discretionary income into maybe some savings for the children, for instance. Maybe looking at downsizing, maybe looking for instead of having a big house, maybe looking at maybe renting out a couple of the rooms. It's just about being creative and looking at also what are you good at. I've heard of people who decided I'm going to take up a hobby, and that hobby eventually became a business. So instead of the person focusing on getting a job, they're now focusing on, I'm the person who's going to employ people. There have been many success stories that have come out of COVID-19 where the person started out feeling overwhelmed and, oh my gosh, woe is me. But just remember to be calm. Take a few days to, because I know it's hard, especially if it's a case where you were, furloughed or you were terminated because they didn't have enough work to keep you on staff. And then look at, okay, what are the things, what are the opportunities here? I can network. I can talk about the skill sets that I have. I can look at freelancing. There's just so many opportunities. So I think it's also important to recognize that we build and feed off of each other. Collaborations, a lot of collaborations are happening through networking opportunities. And instead of it being a situation where people are thinking of themselves only, I find a lot more people are getting strategic and having strategic alliances, for instance, forming mastermind groups, and iron sharpens iron. So it's just about perspective at the end of the day. I'm not going to say it's always going to be easy, and it's patience. It's what they call it. It's a long game, meaning sometimes it's just about making those tiny steps. Maybe going back to school and doing a free course online. There's so many resources out there. Which I think people may not necessarily know about. So that's why I talk a lot about sharing. You're not going to share your business with everyone, but going to maybe your local community center where you can, get some counseling, career counseling, and talk about, what it is that you were doing before and how you can probably transition into having your own business. I know, for instance, in the area where I live, they have the St. Catherine's Enterprise Center where they help people by giving them free workshops and allowing them to get free marketing training and setting up with mentors to help you start your own business, help you with a business plan. And I could talk about this for hours, but the point is that I'm trying to make is focus more on what it is that you want, and also remember to give back to your community. If you find yourself having a little bit of free time because you may not have all those, you may have a little bit more free time because you're not working all those hours you used to work, maybe look at giving back to your community through volunteering. And sometimes doing that puts you in the right atmosphere and having the right network to maybe get your referral to get a job, or I'm just so not into getting a job. My whole focus is on helping people to see that, hey, it's not just about getting a job, but how can I help other people by employing them, being an employer as opposed to being employed. That's my philosophy now. I'm all about having multiple streams of income. I'm not about going for a 9-to-5 job and being at the mercy of it should be more about being fully yourself. And I think if nothing else, COVID has taught us that we're more resilient than we know, that there's nothing wrong with sometimes getting a bit uncomfortable. Yes, it's uncomfortable because you may not have to stretch your imagination and stop thinking about going to this job where you didn't even like, and I found a lot of persons have admitted that it was a blessing in disguise for them, because yes, it may have meant sacrificing a little bit, but long term they're happier because they're home more with their kids. They can give more time to something they're more passionate about, you know. So I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Oh, it does, and really, really helpful. So thank you for that. So we're about to wrap up, but I just wanted you to just talk a little about the show and what can we expect. And I have to say that I was so honored to be a guest on your show not too long ago, and I really do appreciate the platform of giving people a chance to share and shine. So thank you very much.
You're most welcome, Nikki. It was a pleasure having you. We could have chatted for hours, and that's one of the drawbacks of playing, especially doing interviews. I've met so many wonderful people throughout the 2 seasons that I've filmed, and your conversation was really one of the experiences I'll never forget. It brought us into contact with each other, and we were able to learn more about each other. And it's about sharing each other's stories. And for me, the show really came about because I wanted to share people's stories that were inspiring. I believe all of us have a story within us. There are several stories, I'm sure, but integral to the show is about sharing stories of persons pursuing their passion, pursuing their purpose. And for some people, it might be music. For some people, it might be like you know, hosting the Nikki Clarke Show, which is amazing. And I'm really honored. I must say, take the time out to just say thank you for having me and for interviewing me today on your radio show. I'm really honored as well. And
my pleasure.
Just sharing, and just sharing, spreading a little bit of inspiration and hope during these trying times, because I can't recall, at least in my recent history, going through anything like this. I've heard my parents talk about things, and I've heard people who are older talk about things, but to know that we're all living through this pandemic, it is definitely one for the history books. And what has kept me going is meeting new people and hearing how they have grappled with the circumstances that we're all faced with. And like I said, it's a mixed bag. Majority of persons have found that it has been the best for them in terms of business-wise. And yes, there have been a lot of negatives. A lot of persons were put out of business. A lot of persons lost their jobs. A lot of persons lost loved ones. So, and that's very, very, it's something that I can't ignore, and we shouldn't ignore. And that's why I'm so grateful to have the platform I have through the show Conversations with Diana to just give a little testimony to people who are looking for some advice. How do I get into this area of business, for instance? What advice can you give to motivate and encourage someone who may be watching the show because it streams online and who may be looking for that little nugget to just take them through a difficult period? And I've connected people through the show. I've gotten stories of people who watched the show and were able to connect with long lost relatives who came across the show. And for me, that was very, very that was an experience that I didn't even think. The person said the person was watching from another province, and they hadn't heard from this person in years, and they were able to reconnect after several years. So the show is helping to bring people closer, along with helping to give them some advice and some motivation. So, yes, the show is mainly based on telling stories of real people who are pursuing their passion and making significant impacts in their community. So like yourself, there are people who are, through what they're doing, are able to create jobs. They're able to spread happiness and joy. They're able to motivate their staff or even their family members. They've written books and they've talked about the books on the show. And for me, I'm a big believer in knowledge and shared knowledge. And if anyone has gone through an experience and wants to share, to me, it just compounds paying it forward. So for me, it's just been a blessing, and I really look forward to where it takes me in the future.
Absolutely. I'm I second that emotion. Looking forward to seeing what's next for you, Diana. Diana, I really appreciate the time you've taken. I know you're very busy. You carry multiple roles in what you do, but to spend the time with us, I do value. So tell us how we can reach you on social media before we go.
Certainly. I'm available via email at info@dianamyrie. Well, recently switched to .ca, but if you put in .com, you'll get me as well. So it's info@dianamyrie.com or info@dianamyrie.ca. I'm also on Instagram at Diana Myrie, that's DIANAMYRIE, or at Step Into Abundance, that's Step Into Abundance, one word. And you can find me on LinkedIn. And I do have a website as well at dianamyrie.ca or dianamyrie.com.
Excellent. Diana, thank you again for your time. You've been listening to the Nikki Clarke Show. Awesome. Really looking forward to getting a copy of your book and just following you and watching all your amazing steps to your path, your destined journey. So thank you again. And I wish you all the best. Stay strong, stay safe, and we'll stay connected.
Thank you so much, Nikki. And I want to wish you and your show all the best as well, and for also having me again on the show.
My pleasure. All the best to you, and bye for now.
Bye for now.